The evening air was heavy with the scent of lilies as we left the church after Franklin Sullivan's funeral. My father-in-law's casket had been adorned with them. Gloria, his wife of 53 years, had loved lilies. In my exhausted mind, it seemed fitting they were reunited through these flowers, though Gloria had passed 3 months earlier. I leaned against Warren, my husband of 25 years, as we walked to the car. My legs were unsteady after the long day, after the long weeks, really. Franklin's decline had been rapid at the end, and I'd barely slept, keeping vigil by his hospital bed, then arranging the funeral and hosting the distant relatives who had rarely visited during his 8-year battle with dementia. Warren was unusually quiet on the drive home. I didn't press for conversation. We were both tired, but there was something in his silence that felt different. Not grief, but anticipation. I was too numb to pay much attention. When we arrived home, the sprawling colonial we'd bought 20 years ago specifically to accommodate his parents, Warren headed straight to the cabinet where we kept the liquor. "Would you like a drink?" he asked, already pouring himself a generous scotch. "Just water, please," I replied. "I need to clear my head." He brought me water, then raised his glass. "To the end of an era," he said. His toast struck me as odd, not a tribute to his father's life, but a recognition of its conclusion. Still, grief takes many forms. I raised my glass half-heartedly. Warren drained his scotch in one swallow, then poured another before settling into his leather armchair across from me. He looked unburdened, as if the weight he'd carried wasn't grief at all, but obligation. "Well," he said, his voice suddenly brisk, businesslike. "That's finally done. Both of them gone. We're both free now." I stared at him, uncertain I'd heard correctly. Free. "Come on, Marianne. We both know what these last 20 years have been. You fulfilling your duty as the dutiful daughter-in-law, me providing financially. That chapter's closed now." My brain struggled to process his words. "Warren, your father just died. What are you talking about?" He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out an envelope, placing it on the coffee table between us. "I've been waiting for the right time. I suppose there's no perfect moment, but now that both Mom and Dad are gone, there's no reason to delay any longer." With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. Inside were divorce papers already filled out, waiting only for my signature. "I don't understand," I whispered, though the horrible truth was dawning. "I think you do," Warren said, his voice not unkind but detached. "Clinical. You fulfilled your purpose. You took excellent care of my parents. I'll always be grateful for that. But now it's time for us both to move on." "Move on." My voice sounded distant, as if someone else were speaking. "I've met someone," he continued matter-of-factly. "Vanessa. She's the marketing director at the firm. She's well. She understands the kind of life I want to live now. Travel freedom experiences." I looked down at the divorce papers, then back at the man I'd shared my life with for over 2 decades. And what kind of life was I supposed to want, Warren? "You chose this," he said, gesturing around us. "You chose to be the caretaker. You were good at it, better than any nurse we could have hired. But that role is finished now. Your duty is done." The words hit me like physical blows. 20 years of my life reduced to a duty that was now complete. 20 years of bathing, dressing, medicating, cooking, cleaning, advocating, comforting, dismissed as an obligation fulfilled. 20 years of putting my own dreams on hold while Warren built his empire. And now I was being discarded. Warren and I met when I was a 29-year-old charge nurse at Memorial Hospital. He was visiting a colleague who'd undergone an appendectomy, and he asked me out as I was checking the patient's vitals. His confidence charmed me and his quick wit, his ambition. He was working for a mid-sized construction company, then already on the management track. Despite being only a few years out of engineering school, our courtship was a whirlwind. Within 6 months, we were engaged. By our first anniversary, we were married and discussing children. I pictured 2, maybe 3. Warren talked about coaching, Little League. We'd renovate a starter home together, then upgrade as our family grew. I'd work part-time once the children were in school. Warren would continue climbing the corporate ladder. We were so certain of our future, so blissfully confident in our plans. Reality had other ideas. 5 years into our marriage, just as we were seriously trying for our first child, Gloria Sullivan suffered a massive stroke. Warren's father, Franklin, was overwhelmed trying to care for her. Their modest retirement savings wouldn't cover a nursing home without quickly bankrupting them. It would only be temporary, Warren assured me as we discussed moving them into our home. Just until Mom recovers enough for Dad to manage a year tops. That year stretched into 20. Gloria's stroke left her with right-sided paralysis and significant speech difficulties. She required assistance with everything: bathing, dressing, eating, toileting. I drew on my nursing skills, creating care plans, adapting our home for her needs, coordinating with physical and speech therapists. Warren initially helped, but his company was expanding, demanding more of his time. Gradually, the care responsibilities fell entirely to me. "You're so much better at this than I am," he'd say. "Besides, someone needs to earn the money for all these medical expenses." My own nursing career faded away. First, I reduced to part-time, then per diem work, then nothing at all. Each time. Gloria made progress. Another setback would occur: a urinary tract infection, pneumonia, a fall. Our plans for children were perpetually on hold, then silently abandoned entirely. 8 years after Gloria's stroke, Franklin began showing signs of dementia. At first, just forgetfulness and confusion, then wandering agitation, incontinence. Eventually, he no longer recognized Warren, though oddly, he never forgot me, his caregiver. Through it all, I adapted, learned, grew stronger, even as I grew more isolated. My world contracted to the walls of our home, to the medical schedules and hygiene routines, and brief moments of connection with two people who had become, in many ways, more my family than Warren was. Warren's career flourished. He became CEO of what was now one of the largest construction firms in the state. He traveled frequently, attended black tie events, built a network of powerful connections. When home, he retreated to his study, emerging mainly for meals that I prepared and served often while simultaneously feeding Gloria or calming Franklin. We stopped being partners. He became the provider. I became the caretaker, not just for his parents, but for him too. Managing the household, maintaining his social calendar, presenting the image of the perfect corporate wife when required at company functions. I told myself it was temporary, that once Gloria and Franklin were gone, Warren and I would reconnect. Travel, rediscover each other. I clung to that belief through bedsores and seizures, through midnight ambulance calls and endless doctor's appointments. Through 20 years of putting everyone else first. And now, as I sat stunned in our living room, divorce papers in my trembling hands, I realized just how completely I'd deceived myself. The weeks following Franklin's funeral passed in a blur of disbelief and pain. Warren moved into a downtown condo, leaving me alone in the house that still held hospital beds, wheelchairs, grab bars, and 2 decades of caregiving memories. His initial settlement offer was delivered by his attorney. I could stay in the house for 6 months while transitioning back to self-sufficiency. I would receive a one-time payment of $50,000 for my services. All other assets, the vacation home in Florida, the investment accounts, his substantial retirement funds, would remain his accumulated through his sole financial contribution to the marriage. The breathtaking callousness of it left me reeling. 20 years of my life valued at less than Warren earned in 2 months. I sat in Gloria's former room, now empty, except for a lingering scent of the lavender lotion I'd massaged into her thin skin every night, and tried to make sense of my new reality. My nursing credentials had lapsed. I had no recent work history. I was 54 years old with no savings of my own. Warren had always controlled our finances, providing me with a household account and credit cards that he paid. When I called our friends, couples we'd known for years, their responses were illuminating. Most expressed sympathy but kept their distance. A few confided that Warren had told them, I'd changed, become obsessed with caregiving, to the detriment of our marriage, that I'd pushed him away. The narrative had already been established. Poor Warren neglected by his caretaker wife, finally finding happiness with the vibrant, understanding Vanessa. My isolation, once circumstantial, now felt orchestrated. One evening, sorting through Gloria's belongings, a task I'd been avoiding, I found her journal. Gloria had continued writing even after her stroke, her once elegant script transformed into laborious left-handed scrawls. I hadn't read it during her lifetime, respecting her privacy, but now I opened it, seeking some connection to the woman who had become almost a mother to me. What I found changed everything. Warren promised Marianne would be rewarded for her sacrifice. Read an entry from 3 years earlier. Franklin and I have adjusted our will accordingly. She has been our angel. Warren says she'll never want for anything once we're gone. I froze, then frantically flipped through more pages. Spoke with our attorney today. Left Marianne the lake cottage and my mother's jewelry. She loves that cottage. Warren seemed hesitant but agreed. It's only fair given all she's done. Warren took Franklin to update our financial arrangements. Marianne will be provided for. It eases my mind knowing she won't suffer financially, after all she's sacrificed for us. I sat on the floor, journal clutched to my chest as rage replaced grief. Warren had known his parents intended to leave me, assets, significant ones. He had apparently facilitated these arrangements, and now he was hiding their existence, planning to divorce me before I discovered them. The next day, I called my younger sister, Sophia, a family law attorney in a neighboring state. I hadn't spoken to her in months. Caregiving had isolated me even from my own family. "This is elder abuse by proxy," she declared after I explained the situation. "He used you to provide free skilled nursing care for 2 decades, then discarded you once the need ended, and now he's attempting to defraud you of your rightful inheritance. Marianne, you need to fight this." "I don't know if I have the strength," I admitted. "Then borrow mine," she replied, "and Patrick Chen's. He's the best divorce attorney I know for high-asset, complex cases. I'm calling him right now." Later that week, I met with Dr. Eleanor Kim, my former supervisor at the hospital, and one of the few friends who'd reached out after news of our separation, spread over coffee in her office. Away from prying eyes, she listened to my story. Do you realize," she said when I'd finished, "that what you provided wasn't just familial care? It was professional-level skilled nursing. The kind that would have cost Warren hundreds of thousands of dollars if he'd hired it out." I stared at her, never having quantified my contribution in those terms. "Nursing homes charge $80,000 to $120,000 annually per person for the level of care you provided." She continued, "Home health nurses with your skills command $40 to $60 an hour. For 20 years, Marianne, that's your economic contribution to the marriage." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "And your skills are still valuable. We have a critical shortage of nurses with geriatric experience. When you're ready, there's a place for you back in healthcare." I left her office standing straighter than I had in weeks. The path forward wasn't yet clear, but for the first time since Franklin's funeral, I felt the stirrings of hope and determination. Patrick Chen's office exuded quiet confidence, much like the man himself. He listened attentively as I shared my story, taking detailed notes and asking occasional clarifying questions. When I showed him Gloria's journal, his eyebrows rose fractionally, the only break in his professional composure. "This is significant," he said, "but we'll need more. The original will for starters, and evidence of your contributions to the marriage beyond caregiving. Did you help with Warren's business in any capacity? Entertain clients? Support his career advancement?" I thought about the countless dinner parties I'd organized, the holiday gifts I'd selected for his business associates, the late-night strategy sessions where I'd offered insights that Warren later presented as his own. "Yes," I said extensively. "Good. We'll also need to investigate his finances thoroughly. If he's been planning this divorce for some time, he may have hidden assets. But he's been handling all our money for decades," I admitted. "I don't even know what we have." Patrick's smile was thin but reassuring. That's what forensic accountants are for. Over the next month, I became a detective. In my own life, I searched every drawer cabinet and storage box in our home, photographing documents and forwarding them to Patrick's team. I reconnected with former colleagues from the hospital who had witnessed the abrupt end to my career. I compiled medical records showing the extent of Gloria's and Franklin's conditions, documenting the skilled care they required. Sophia arrived for an extended visit, helping me search for the original will and providing much-needed emotional support. Together we discovered that Warren had cleaned out Franklin's home office shortly after his death, removing filing cabinets full of documents. "He's destroying evidence," Sophia declared. "We need to act quickly." Patrick filed emergency motions preventing Warren from disposing of any marital assets while our divorce was pending. He also subpoenaed records from Franklin and Gloria's attorney, who we discovered had been replaced 2 months before Gloria's death with a lawyer from Warren's firm. The original attorney, now retired, agreed to meet with us. Martin Goldberg remembered the Sullivans clearly and was troubled by their abrupt departure from his practice. "Franklin was very specific about providing for you. He told me he and Gloria executed wills leaving you their lake cottage in Vermont and an investment account valued at approximately $300,000 at that time. Gloria's jewelry collection was also specifically bequeathed to you." Warren was aware of these provisions. He attended several planning meetings. "Do you have copies of those wills?" Patrick asked. "Unfortunately, no." When they transferred their business to the new attorney, all documents were released. But I do have my meeting notes, which reference the provisions. It was another piece of the puzzle, but we needed more concrete evidence. Then came a breakthrough from an unexpected source. The home health aide who had occasionally relieved me contacted me after hearing about the divorce. "Miss Sullivan, I have something you should see," Lucia Martinez said. "When we met at a quiet cafe, Mr. Franklin gave me this envelope last year. He said to give it to you if anything didn't seem right after he was gone." Inside was a copy of the original will, the one designating the cottage and investments to me, along with a handwritten note from Franklin, dated during a period when his dementia was in temporary remission. "Marianne, you have been the daughter we never had. Warren has promised you'll be taken care of, but I've learned to be cautious. This is insurance. You deserve everything we can give you and more. With love and gratitude, Franklin." I couldn't speak, overcome by this final act of protection from a man I'd cared for through his most vulnerable years. "This isn't about the money," I told Patrick later, showing him the documents. "It's about the recognition, about not being erased." "It's about both," he replied pragmatically, "and this will help us with both." The divorce proceedings became contentious quickly. Warren's attorney, an aggressive litigator from his company's legal team, portrayed me as a wife who had neglected my marital relationship in favor of obsessive caregiving. Mrs. Sullivan made her choice to abandon her career and focus entirely on her in-laws. He argued during an early hearing. Mr. Sullivan financially supported this choice for 20 years. Now that this chapter has concluded, he has generously offered a settlement to help her transition to independence. Patrick's response was measured but devastating. My client did not choose to become a full-time caregiver. She responded to a family crisis with compassion and skill. For 20 years, she provided professional-level nursing care that would have cost Mr. Sullivan approximately $4 million if obtained commercially. This was her economic contribution to the marriage, enabling Mr. Sullivan to focus on his career without the distraction of his parents' care needs. He then presented Gloria's journal and Franklin's protected will, requesting a full accounting of the assets that should have passed to me. Warren's face darkened as he realized what I'd discovered. During a break in the proceedings, he approached me in the hallway, his voice low and urgent. "What are you trying to accomplish here, Marianne? Dragging my parents' private wishes into public court. Embarrassing me, is this revenge?" I looked at the man I'd once loved, now a stranger to me. "No. Warren. This is justice. You used me for 20 years, then tried to discard me when I was no longer useful. Your parents recognized my sacrifice. They wanted to ensure I was secure. You betrayed not just me, but them." "I took care of you for 20 years, he hissed. "Put a roof over your head, clothes on your back, and I wiped your mother's body every day for 15 years. I interrupted, my voice steady. I reoriented your father through thousands of episodes of confusion. I administered medications, prevented bed sores, managed feeding tubes and catheters and oxygen. I did the work of a skilled nurse, a physical therapist, a care coordinator, and a hospice provider. And I did it out of love for them and for you. He stepped back, momentarily silenced. I didn't expect gratitude, Warren, but I never ever expected betrayal. The case grew more complex as our legal teams dug deeper. Patrick's forensic accountant discovered Warren had been transferring assets to accounts and properties in Vanessa's name for over 2 years. He had also channeled funds through his company, disguising personal expenses as business costs to hide his growing relationship with her. Meanwhile, expert witnesses calculated the economic value of my caregiving and household management. A geriatric care specialist testified that the level of care I provided would have required multiple professional caregivers working in shifts, estimating the cost at over $175,000 annually for both parents in recent years. Eleanor testified about my nursing skills and the market value of such specialized care, particularly for dementia patients who benefited from consistency and familiarity. Mrs. Sullivan didn't just provide physical care, she explained. She created a therapeutic environment that almost certainly extended both patients' lifespans and quality of life. This is skilled nursing of the highest caliber. Warren's team brought witnesses. 2 friends who testified I had withdrawn from social life, colleagues who claimed I rarely attended company functions in recent years. Their narrative portrayed me as a woman who had chosen isolation and caregiving over marriage. What they failed to recognize was how their testimony actually strengthened my case, highlighting the extent of my sacrifice and Warren's failure to support or acknowledge it. The turning point came when Patrick called Lucia Martinez to testify. She described an interaction she'd witnessed between Warren and Franklin during one of her shifts. Mr. Franklin was having a clear day, rare with his dementia. He asked Mr. Warren if Mrs. Sullivan knew about the cottage and the money they were leaving her. Mr. Warren assured him it was all arranged. Mr. Franklin made him promise, saying, "She saved us from that nursing home. She deserves it." Warren's attorney objected vigorously, but the testimony stood. When the judge finally ruled, it was a sweeping victory. I was awarded half of all marital assets, including Warren's retirement accounts and investment portfolios. The Vermont cottage and investment account from Franklin and Gloria's original will were to be transferred to me immediately, plus damages for Warren's attempt to conceal them. The court also awarded me substantial alimony based on my age, the length of our marriage, and my career sacrifice. This court finds that Mrs. Sullivan made extraordinary non-financial contributions to this marriage, the judge stated. The economic value of her skilled caregiving services combined with her support of Mr. Sullivan's career advancement constitutes substantial contribution to the marital estate. Warren sat stone-faced as the judgment was read. His relationship with Vanessa had unraveled during the proceedings, particularly after evidence emerged that he had been transferring assets to her name to hide them from me and potentially from the IRS. As we left the courtroom, I felt no triumph, only relief and perhaps the first fragile tendrils of freedom. 2 years have passed since the divorce was finalized. The healing hasn't been linear, but it has been steady. I chose to sell the family home. Too many caregiving memories haunted its rooms. Instead, I renovated the Vermont cottage, transforming it into a peaceful retreat that bears no resemblance to a sick room. Its lakefront location soothes me in ways I never knew I needed. With Eleanor's encouragement, I completed a nurse refresher course and recertified my license. I now work part-time at a geriatric clinic using my unique combination of professional training and personal experience to support families navigating elder care. The work is emotionally demanding but deeply rewarding. Most significantly, I've established the Sullivan Caregiver Foundation, using a portion of my settlement to provide respite care education and legal guidance for family caregivers, particularly those who have sacrificed careers to care for relatives. We advocate for legislative changes to recognize the economic value of family caregiving in divorce proceedings and estate planning. My relationship with Warren remains civil but distant. His attempt to rehabilitate his reputation by claiming he'd always intended to provide generously once the divorce was settled fell flat among those who knew the truth. His company has struggled, losing several key contracts to competitors, as his focus wavered during our legal battle. Last month, I attended a fundraising gala for the hospital where I once worked. Warren was there. Construction firms always sponsor such events, and we exchanged brief pleasantries. His hair has grayed considerably, and new lines mark his face. "You look well, Marianne," he said, his tone suggesting surprise. "I am well," I replied simply. "The clinic you're working with, I hear good things. We're helping families navigate what I went through alone." He had the grace to look momentarily ashamed. I've often thought about things I would have done differently. I studied him, this man I'd once loved enough to sacrifice everything for. "That's a start, Warren." As I moved away to speak with Eleanor, I realized I no longer carried anger toward him. He had shown me exactly who he was, and in doing so had ultimately set me free to discover who I could be without him. Later that evening, a woman approached me, perhaps 60, with worried eyes and the unmistakable exhaustion I recognized from my own mirror for so many years. "Dr. Kim said you might understand," she began hesitantly. "My husband's mother needs full-time care. He wants me to quit my job to provide it. I don't know what to do." I invited her to sit, recognizing this conversation as part of my new purpose. "Let me share some things I wish someone had told me 20 years ago," I said gently. "This is my life now, using my hard-earned wisdom to help others avoid the pitfalls I couldn't see, supporting those in the trenches of caregiving and building a community for women, rediscovering themselves after years of putting others first. Sometimes when I sit on my cottage deck watching sunrise over the lake, I think of Gloria and Franklin. Despite everything that followed, I don't regret caring for them. They recognized my value, even when their son couldn't. In their own way, they tried to protect me. What I do regret is losing myself so completely in the role of caregiver that I became invisible to Warren, to our friends, eventually, even to myself. I regret not establishing clear boundaries, not demanding recognition for my contributions, not maintaining my own identity separate from my caregiving responsibilities. These are the lessons I share now with others, walking similar paths. Caregiving can be an act of profound love, but it should never become a form of self-erasure. As for Warren's parting words to me that night after his father's funeral, "Your duty is done." He was right, though not in the way he intended. My duty to subsume my needs to everyone else's was indeed finished. My duty to myself, however, was just beginning. If you're reading this and recognizing your own story in mine, please know you're not alone. Your caregiving has value, economic, emotional, and societal value that deserves recognition. Don't wait 20 years. As I did to claim that recognition, your contribution matters, your life matters, and it's never too late to reclaim it. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to join our community. Share in the comments if you've had similar experiences with caregiving and how you maintained your sense of self through it all.